Will you consider this? Sustainability is a buzzword in today's world, a necessary buzzword at that. In Central Illinois, we have a woman whose business it is to do her part and help us do ours to be much more eco-friendly. Stay right here. In the movie The Graduate, we learned that plastics were the wave of the future. Well, the future has been here for some time now, and we see photos all too often of landfills with mountains of large plastic jugs, presenting an environmental problem for us and future generations. Well, doing her part to make some eco-friendly changes and educate the rest of us is Diana Ingalls with Rudelbox, from Germantown Hills, of all places.
That is correct, and my office is here downtown in the Warehouse District.
Awesome. Well, okay, first of all, let's talk about what is Rudelbox.
Rudelbox is a woman-owned company that is focused on helping companies be more sustainable. And how we do that is through packaging, through brand voice, and through how they communicate on their website of different things that their company does to create an offset to their carbon footprint.
How did you come up with the name Rudelbox?
Well, we have some friends in Scotland. Shout out to Andrew. He is a naming expert. So we worked with him to come up with names that would bounce around in your ear. We wanted people to remember it. We wanted them to have fun. So if you think about an otter, how they jump into the ocean and they might rudel about to find that perfect little morsel among the rocks. Rudel is how we find people's gold when they want to create a brand that communicates the good that they do. So you're rudely around to find that gold, and then you're going to put it in a box, and that box could be packaging like a subscription, or it could be packaging on a shelf, or it could be a website like an e-commerce website.
Well, it's got a ring to it. Mm-hmm. You can remember it. And you went through the Generator program, and you were in the first class of entrepreneurs.
Right.
And how did you get involved with that, or how did you learn about Generator?
That's an easy question. So our office is located inside the Nest co-working space, which is an opportunity for entrepreneurs to have office space at a reduced rate. And the co-working space is occupied by Andrew Newey. He's the innovation officer for the GPEDC, and Aaron Gigas is there most days, as is Nate Dominaghini. Sorry, Nate. Nate brought G-Beta to our attention and said, apply for this. And we had no idea what it was. And then Andrew Newey said, yes, definitely apply for it. So we applied for it without even knowing what it was. And we applied for G-Beta with our brand Wild Rooted, which is a company of Rudelbox.
Well, that came first?
So Rudelbox, Wild Rooted's been around for a while, but Rudelbox is my company, the woman-owned company. And so Wild Rooted, we recently had our lawyer switch it to be under Rudelbox so that we could keep it all as one entity and not lose our minds doing admin.
Okay.
So Wild Rooted is what we took through Generator, and we didn't even have a pitch deck together when we applied with Nate Dominaghini. And he's like, you guys are in, and here we go. And so we spent the next several weeks honing what our message was, what we wanted to get out of this, and learned how to do a pitch. And I did the pitch in January at in the event center in the Heights.
Okay. And so you got a lot of names you have to pronounce there too, and Danielle Scarzello.
I don't usually say her name because I haven't practiced it enough to get it right, so sorry, Danielle.
But there's nobody Smith or Black or anything.
Right.
Well, that's original too.
Right.
All right, so this is Wild Rooted. This is an example of something that you've done. And this is a natural, natural fiber welding, basically.
Yeah.
You're working with natural fibers, and what else?
So Natural Fiber Welding is a company here in Peoria that's focused on using plants, not plastic. And they're working with companies like Mercedes-Benz and Porsche. So when you think about Rudelbox and Wild Rooted, we're kind of a small company using the product, but we have big plans to be in the national park stores. We were just recently in Portland at the Public Lands Alliance talking with the national park buyers, and everybody was really excited about both Mirum and Algae Ink.
Okay,
And-
let's go into that too. So
Okay.
this is Mirum. It feels kind of like leather.
Yeah, it's meant to replace faux leather and real leather. So there's no butchering of animals, and then there's no residual plastics going into landfills because this is all plant-based.
And this it's biodegradable.
Or it can be made back into more Mirum.
Okay. And what does it consist of?
So mostly rubber, essential oils, and then agricultural waste. So for instance, the one you see here that's black has rice hulls on it, and you'll see little flecks.
Okay, let's see here. Oh, I see it, yeah. And again, it feels like leather. It's durable.
Yeah.
And how did you come up with that whole scientific combination?
So for us, being in a position of being a sustainable or eco-conscious brand, we knew that we wanted to work with companies who were doing things like natural fiber welding and living ink technology. And when we're printing our shirts, we'll print them with Algae Ink. And then when we're making hard goods like these straps that you see or this Apple AirTag, we knew that Mirum was the product that we wanted to use. And so Natural Fiber Welding has licensed us to be a converter for them. Not everybody can just go order the material and make something out of it. You have to be licensed. You have to use certain messaging so that when someone picks it up in a store, they'll have a sticker on it that says that it's made with Mirum, a plant-based material that's sustainable. And we go as far as, like, when you do close-ups on these key tags, you'll see that we actually write that on there because we want people to know.
So this is something, getting back to your roots, basically, and you got Rootlebox, you got Wild Root, you have kind of a theme there.
Yeah.
But this is what your life has been all about, really growing up in Germantown Hills with a name like Ingalls, but you really kind of were Little House on the Prairie there.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I grew up on a family homestead next door to my grandparents, which at the time I didn't realize was going to be a huge gift to grow up that way. And aunts and uncles and cousins. So every day was just an adventure in nature. So my mom would say, get out of the house. I'll see you
play.
at dinner. When it's dark, come back for a meal. And we would say, okay, and we would just go explore. And I kind of mentioned on the Greg and Dan show that we were kind of feral children. And I mean that with great affection. We were allowed to just go out and play and build worlds that you couldn't do if you didn't have that freedom.
So you play in the woods, play just, what kinds of things did you play?
So with my cousins, my cousin John and Steve and Ted and Jane and Beth, hopefully they all listen to this because they've been very supportive of the brand. We would dig caves. It's weird, you think you could have had accidents and things like that, but we didn't think about that. We weren't worried about anything. We would just play. We would build forts. We would have mud fights. It was just very simple play, but it was nourishing.
It was earthy. You were in touch with the earth.
Exactly.
And you didn't have, you started recycling at an early age, basically, because you didn't have garbage pickup out there. Is that right?
Yeah. I saw a heat map about a year ago that showed where the landfills are in our country. And I remember back, when we grew all of our own food. We didn't butcher our own meat, but we grew all of our own food. So my grandpa would plan that out, and we would feed all 4 of our families. And so I would remember we didn't have garbage pickup. We had the compost pile, and then we had things that went back just into the garden and was tilled back into the garden. So someone who I follow that is also an eco-friendly packaging designer, they mentioned that landfills are only 70 years old. So it is very possible to reverse engineer those and not have those anymore. So I think there's a lot of companies out that are doing great things like Living Ink and Natural Fiber Welding that's making that easy for me to design packaging that has no waste.
So what is your background is in design. And tell me where you got your start there, that it could kind of morph into what you're doing now.
Yeah, so before I started my own company, I've been a designer for 30 years, but before I started my own company, I worked at a company called Multiad. where I cut my teeth and learned a lot from industry experts. There's a lot you don't learn in school, but you can learn from masters in the field.
Right.
And then I moved on to PGS Publications, where I worked for Crafts Magazine and So News and their magazines, and learned another set of skills that I didn't know I would have. And then when I was pregnant with my second child, Brennan, I decided that I just wanted to run my studio out of my home, and that's what I've been doing freelance ever since, working for companies like Unity Point Health and other big brands that you can't mention because you signed NDAs, but making a living while raising my children. And then launched Riddlebox last October with a huge support from Central Illinois. I couldn't build a brand without the support that comes naturally here in the city.
Are you amazed at the kind of support that you can get from this community? I mean, it's very generous.
Yeah. So running my studio out of Germantown for around 20 years, I wasn't in the hub of everything every day, but now that my studio is downtown, you have those intersections, you have those collisions, you meet amazing people who want to offer you help, that there's not funds to advertise that help's available, but there's so much help. So if somebody wants to start a business here, reach out to me or anybody in the co-working space. We can connect you with people.
And that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Well, now you have some brands that you're working on that are local. You have Beard Brothers, and so you do the packaging for them as well as the labels and everything.
So I don't do the printing, I do all of the design work
Okay.
and getting the vessels picked out, making sure they're 99% plastic free, keeping them in line. So when Danny and Patrick will say, we want to do this, I'll say, yes, that would align with your values of being 99% plastic free, or no, we should find another option.
What other locals do you have here? There's another Beard Brothers there.
So Hilltop Honey, we just redesigned their product packaging.
And they're out of Fulton County.
Yep. So a locally owned apiary doing some amazing things to provide honey. It's available at Hy-Vee and other local stores. We redesigned their packaging in that we knew it still needed to be in plastic, but we chose a recycled juice bottle that was lighter in weight instead of the current one, and then we redesigned their packaging so that people could easily see what flavors or seasons they're purchasing.
And now that was interesting. I saw that online. There's honey from the spring and from the summer and the fall, and I had no idea.
Yeah, it's like a fine wine. You choose what you like. Yeah.
So whatever flowers are in season, they'll go and get
It's
it.
nature, right?
Yeah. Did you know that before you started working with Hilltop?
Not so much. He's taught me a lot about bees. There's a lot of times when you have a customer come to you that you're not in that space, so I'm technically allergic to bees, honeybees specifically, so I don't usually hang out with that world. But when you're learning about the brand and trying to understand forward-facing how you're going to communicate that on the label, because you have a small amount of real estate, you're asking questions constantly, and your clients most often than not will share that information, so it expands your world.
How did you find out well, you said you've gone to Fred's Shoe Repair, and this is the Miriam.
Yeah.
How did you find out about them possibly being interested? How did you've got all these different connections going on.
I think it comes down to we live in a community where growing up here, we've always shared information. And one of our T-shirts that I designed is a campfire, and it says share stories with the people you love. But it's not only stories, but it's information. So if you can save somebody from having to go through a year of finding the perfect sewer for your product, share that information. We found it ourselves by asking constantly from our network of people who can sew these things. And then we're like, wait, Fred's Shoe Repair, we've been going there to have them repair our shoes for years. That's an obvious. So we've been working with Ray and the rest of the team, and he's been super helpful in designing these two prototypes and helping us pick out hardware, and just really communicating and keeping things local is really important to us.
Well, and that was one thing that stood out to me too as I was reading through some of your information. You are really concentrating on Central Illinois, and that's because of your love of Central Illinois and all the help you get, or what else?
So traveling has given me a great affection for the area. Being born and raised here, I think I take a lot of things for granted, that there's somebody that's always going to be there to help you if you're in trouble. So if you're out in, let's say, off-grid in a national park, which there's no cell reception, you're on your own, and that's kind of scary. But if you think about here, I can advance my company and our brand a lot quicker with the help of and love from people in Central Illinois.
How are people finding you? So how did I ask this already? How did Danny and Pat find you for Beard Brothers?
I think it's a friend of a friend of a friend is usually the story.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly, but I love those guys. They're great to work with. They didn't like try to hold my hands while I was designing everything, and they were very open to being very sustainable. They said yes right away. I didn't have to convince them. So it's usually word of mouth, which is great for me because I'm not a salesperson. I'm very much introverted.
Oh, you
So-
think? Your shy little voice. Okay, I got that. That's accurate.
Right. So I love leaning on friends and family and just other clients I've already worked with to connect me with future clients.
Tell me about this algae ink. It sounds bad. It
Does
sounds
it?
like,
Okay.
well, just
All right.
algae. You
Okay.
know, I mean, that's not something that is usually soft and
Okay.
cuddly.
Okay.
But tell me about that.
Yeah, so Algae Ink is made by Living Ink out of Colorado. Scott Fulbright is the owner. I've actually connected them with Natural Fibers, maybe do some collaborations. So Algae Ink, I believe, I'm not a scientist, but I believe algae is the first plant in the world. And algae grows to produce certain functions. But if you think about the black ink on your carbon copy right there or your Xerox, it's made with a fossil fuel-based ink. And Scott's on a mission to start with black, but then he's going to move on to green and then orange. But black is the most readily used ink, and if he can affect that by using algae, which takes carbon out of the air, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, not a scientist, it's going to help in a big way. So he's working with big printers, he's working with Patagonia for their labeling, their tags. We're working with it on our communication, like our physical point of purchase and our direct mail, as well as our t-shirts and dog bandanas. So we're trying to offset our carbon footprint
As well.
by doing that. And if we're relying on less fossil fuel and just on green things that grow in a pond, win.
It's all right there.
Free money.
You just don't want to swim in that algae.
No,
Right.
not so much, I don't.
What has surprised you the most about all of these different connections and you know, we can talk things sprouting up in your world of being eco-friendly?
I think what's exciting and surprising to me is how many people in Central Illinois are embracing it. So if you think about Colorado or California, you automatically think they're not using plastic bags. They're using reusables. They're confining what you can and can't use because it's ending up in the ocean. We don't have an ocean, so that maybe we're not that aware of it. But I'm really excited that Peoria might be the next eco-friendly hub. Can I say that?
And why so? Yes.
I think because when I niched down to be a designer of sustainability or eco-conscious brands last fall, I've had more support come out of the woodwork than I would ever imagine here. It's exciting.
And really, so you grew up, I mean, you were a recycling generation. My mom was. My mom got married during the Depression. You know, we recycled aluminum foil and things like that
Good.
because we did long before there was even a word for it. And you did that as well, you said.
Definitely. Yeah. So when you had scraps, let's say, well, most things didn't come in packaging back then.
Right,
So I'm
no,
a
it
kid of the 60s and 70s, which I love. You think about going up to my grandma's house for lunch just about every other day, and I don't remember throwing packaging away. It was always like orange peels or paper that you got from the abattoir where you bought your meat, or paper tape. So it's not like we haven't done this before. We just have to remember that.
We have to get back to it. We
Yeah.
get back
Yeah.
to being able to feel the earth, earthing, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you think about it when you run around without your shoes on. There's minerals and beautiful things that come up through into your feet and help you. It's just you becoming nature. Or, I mean, if you think about it, humans are nature.
So you were always kind of a naturalist too,
Yeah.
then when you were playing with your cousins,
Yeah.
all those that you named
Yeah.
and everything, and digging into the earth.
Right.
Good for you, and you're still doing it.
Yep.
Well, what do you foresee in the near future for Rootlebox and Wild Rooted, Routed?
Yep. So I think for Rootlebox, I would love to have people reach out to me who want to make some small changes in either how they ship things or how they package their products, or if they need some help using that messaging on their website. For Wild Rooted, we have strong interest from 9 national park stores. We're really working hard to get those things prepped and prepared for them in a catalog and making sure that we can do what we say we're going to do. So the goals for this year is to be in at least 1 national park store.
But mostly you want to stay local, or does it matter?
I would like to have it all, if that's okay to say. So
That's fine. You got to set goals.
I would like Peoria to be, or Central Illinois, I should say, because we're bigger than just Peoria in the city. I would like this area to become known as a hub for sustainability and being eco-friendly, and I already think we're on that path. But I would also like to reach our brand out to the rest of the country. There's so many cool people out there that I would like to meet and bring their stories back to home so that we can learn from them and maybe implement some of those things that we don't know here.
And will that be outreach on your part, and how will you accomplish that, you think?
So we go to a lot of shows. We have plans we're usually at the Peoria Farmers Market, but this year we're going to take a break and reach out to markets in other areas in the country. Probably lean more towards people in the outdoor adventure space. We're also in Bushwhacker already and at Urban Artifacts, but we want to reach out to markets that we haven't tested yet. Because if it plays in Peoria, it'll play anywhere,
That's
right?
right,
That's
yeah.
what I've been told.
And it's you and your husband that are doing this?
And my son, Brennan.
Okay. So it's just the 3 of you for right now.
Yep.
And your son is how old, and what kind of ideas does he have that you haven't thought of because you're a child of the 60s and 70s?
Right. So we call Brennan the analog man because Brennan is an old soul. Every time I see him, I think of my grandpa that I grew up next door to. And fun fact, when you see an owl on any of our designs, that's a symbol of my grandpa.
All right.
And his wisdom. But Brennan is 25, and he is finishing up at ICC as an art student and working on his next phase of what he wants to do with his life. But he designs, illustrates, and helps us go to market with Wild Rooted, and works at Nick and Willie's Pizza in Peoria. So shout out to Nick and Willie's because they've been here for a long time.
And then your husband, what did he do before he partnered with you in Rootlebox?
Yeah, great question. John worked at Multi-Ed for 31 years. And a couple years his job was outsourced to another country, and he joined me in the studio. So I tell him what to do every day.
Okay, well, that's good. It saves the marriage. Right. What's your favorite of all of the things that you've managed to create so far, specifically for Wild Rooted and Rootlebox? What's your favorite? Or do you have one? Is it like kids? It's hard to pick one.
I think my favorite thing with Miram would be the Apple AirTag, because I think that's going to serve a large market.
Yeah, so
and
tell
that's
me
just
about
a
that.
prototype, so it has an Apple AirTag in it, and it's made with the cobalt blue Miram, and then Fred cut and made the prototype for us. I'm really proud of that because I think that'll serve a really big market. And then as far as algae ink, I'm really impressed with the illustrations John just did, my husband, for all the national parks, and those are all printed with algae ink. So I'm really excited to see where that goes.
So algae ink is sustainable when you put it in the laundry too? I mean, it's not going to fade, wash out?
Algae ink doesn't sit on the surface like plastisols. If you think about when you're sleeping on a t-shirt and you feel a little bit of plastic, that will be the plastisol from the inks. And we do have some shirts printed with plastisol. We do 1 pass instead of 2, so it's somewhat eco-friendly. But the algae ink actually stains the fabric. And so when it stains the fabric, you can actually use it as a dye. And I know there's a lot of companies out there that are dyeing fabric with it right now. And it's a beautiful kind of charcoal color. So when you're sleeping in it and you roll over, you have just that sense of
It's soft.
softness, and it just feels lovely. And we print all of our shirts on Bella Canvas, which is very transparent in how they dye things. And they're just really open to how they treat their employees, and just a really great company, and we do 100% cotton. So we're trying to do it the right way.
You are
hard.
fascinating, yeah, and you've learned, you really have, you have roots, and you've grown straight up from those roots. Well, thanks so much for sharing
Thanks
all
for
this
having me.
information.
Thanks.
And we hope to see some more of your products around town.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks for joining us as well. Stay safe and healthy, and be happy.